Hi everyone, this is Thomas King, and now I'd like to welcome you to the final lecture of Lesson 0, How to Play Chess. Now, by understanding the movement of the pieces and the exceptional rules, or the special rules as I worded it, you already have a solid grasping of the rules of chess. In fact, under most social circles, this knowledge alone will be enough for you to play chess. However, there are two more things that will be necessary for tournament play that I'd like to briefly go over in Lesson 0C. And they are algebraic notation, a way of writing down the moves that we use in chess, and also the clock. That is how you restrict a player's amount of time to think in a game. Okay, so first things first, notation. Now, in chess, when playing serious games, and it also helps when studying games, we have a thing called algebraic notation. And what we do is, like in a map, essentially in a map, you know how, say, for example, it'll say coordinates B8 of page 237 in the local map of your city or town. You'll go to that square and you'll look roughly around that square and you'll be able to find the location you're looking for. We have a similar system in chess, where every square has an algebraic coordinate that is determined by the letter, which is the equivalent of eastings on a map, because they would run east to west on a map, and numbers, which are the northings on a map. So what we do is, for example, we're told to look for the square F4. What we do is we go to the easting ranked F, and then to the northing ranked 4, and we get this square here, F4. So every square has its own algebraic coordinate, and like in geography, we say the eastings then the northings. So that is, you say the letter then the number. So there's no such thing as square 4F. If you say that, people will think that you're not a particularly good chess player, because there's no such thing as 4F. It's F4. There's no such thing as E4. It's 4E rather. It's E4. We always say the eastings then the northings in geography, and we always say the letter then the number in chess. Okay. So that's how we determine the square. So I'll bring the pieces back on the board to my regular Merida 2 style. And every piece has its own letter. So for the rook, we use the symbol R. For the bishop, we use the symbol B. For the king, K. For the queen, Q. All very logical stuff. But the knight and the pawn are perhaps less logical than their counterparts. And the reason is that the pawn, we don't have a symbol. So if when writing down a move, I just say the square, then that means I'm moving a pawn. So rather than saying P-E4 here, I just say E4, just to make it simpler. And you might also notice that since the king already has K, the knight can't have that as well. So we use N for the knight. Okay, so what we just do is we state the square that the piece moves to. So, N. So, if I move my knight from G1 to F3, then I will say knight to F3. And it'll just be written down as NF3. No need to put G1 F3, no need NG1 F3, just NF3. Simple. Now, of course, one problem does arise when using this system. Sometimes, suppose we just set up this position here. We can see, whoa, suppose black just plays natural knight c6 here. Here, saying NC3, say I move here. Saying NC3 isn't good enough, because this knight can move to c3. This knight can move to c3. So what you just do in this case is you say the letter that it comes from. So knight e to c3 or knight b to c3. Again, problems do arise from this. Take, for example, this position here. It's not one that will arise particularly often. In fact, if this position ever does arise in one of your games, then you probably need to just read a beginner book, which is what the purpose of my series is here. But now we have the same dilemma. Knight a3, knight c3 doesn't really cut it because it's a knight. But we can't say knight b to c3 either, because both knights are on the b file. So it's a pretty simple solution. I'm sure you figured it out. So if I move my knight on b5 to c3, I just put knight 5 to c3. If I move my knight on b1 to c3, I put knight 1 to c3. Not at all a difficult concept. Okay. And lastly, the clock. So I'm not sure how much of it you can see here, but what I have here open is an image of a chess clock. Now, what these things do is that they measure how much time each side has. So each side is given a certain amount of time. In the case of the image I'm showing here, 5 minutes, to make all their moves. And what you'll do is you'll simply tap the button. So I think you can see this one here. So say, for example, we'd click start, and then this time, one will be lifted over the other. So suppose this one's pressed down, this one's lifted over. And that means that this side's clock will start ticking down. It'll go 4:59, 4:58, 4:57 via seconds. And while the clock's ticking down, you make your move, and then you press the button down. And instead of ticking down on your clock, it starts ticking down on his. And when that happens, the idea is that when you run out of time, you lose the game. I guess anyway, that's the end of lesson 0. That was a particularly short lesson. So now you know the rules of chess. If you don't already, you can check out lesson 1, which deals with managing of programs. And then we're going to move on how you can improve your chess. First, we'll focus on tactics, because I believe tactics are the most important for a beginner. Then we'll focus on some middle game strategy, then on to some end games, and then opening theory. So anyway, now we've finished the real basic stuff, we can get on to the real chess. So I'll see you in lesson 2A, which will cover the tactic superior force. See you then.